So a lot of developers have their code on GitHub, but they have no way to share a runnable version of their code. So in this video, we'll take a GitHub application and deploy it onto NodeRun. So let's get started.
All right, everyone. So here I am looking at a GitHub repository called Socket.io. Now, if you look around at Socket.io, this is actually an entire framework, but I'm digging into this examples directory. It's nice because they provide a few examples that use sockets, and we're going to take a look at what it takes to get one of those examples up and running on NodeRun.com. So we're going to dive into this whiteboard example and just see what does it take to get the whiteboard actually functional rather than what we have here is just looking at the source code. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the home page of the repository and I'm going to click on the clone URL, and I'm going to copy the HTTPS URL into my clipboard so that I can now go to NodeRun.com and create a new space and clone that URL. So whenever I create a new space on NodeRun.com, it gives me a number of options on how to get started. So I can select a template. That's one option, but in this case, we're cloning from a Git repository. Because I'm signed on with my GitHub profile onto NodeRun.com, it's showing me my repositories. Of course, this one is not my repository. It's a third-party repository. So this is why we copied the URL. I'm going to go ahead and paste the URL into the text box here and click the clone button. And this is now bringing all of that code into NodeRun. So here's all the code out here in the files tree. And again, I'm going to drill down into the examples directory, find the whiteboard. And in order to make something functional within NodeRun and actually runnable, you have to tell it what your starting file is, what the server file is. And so in this particular case, this index.js, and we can take a look at it. It's a small file, looks like it's based on Express. This is the file where everything starts. So what you have to do is you have to right click it, select properties, and then you have to tell NodeRun that this is my starting file. Now as soon as you select this, it will ask you whether this is a custom server. So NodeRun ships with a built-in Express server, and if you wanted to use that, there's some benefits to that, but in this particular case, this is a custom Express server that this particular application provides. So we have to select this box and then click OK. So we've told NodeRun what the starting file is, and that's basically the main step of what you need to do. And then the next step would be to publish the application. So let's go ahead and click publish. I'm already signed in, so I'm going to give this a name. Let's call it whiteboard example. And then I'll go ahead and click the publish button. So now this is a published application, and here are the URLs for opening it, launching it. I'm going to close this and go over a few other steps. Now, normally, if the application is built the right way, this is all that you'd have to do, and you're pretty much done. But one thing to watch out for is how URLs are used. I'm going to go into some of the client-side files like this index.html for this application, and the things that I'm looking for are absolute URLs. Now the reason you can't use absolute URLs or you shouldn't use absolute URLs is because of this scenario like this when we're running things on NodeRun.com, a site that hosts many applications. It's a domain name that has many applications hosted on it, and we have to have the URLs be relative so that it goes back to the appropriate application. Like for example, style.css, this is done the right way. This is a relative URL. But if you look over here, these /main.js and /socket.io, these are put in here as absolute URLs. That's what the slash does. And basically what I'm going to do is eliminate the slash. So I've updated index.html, and any other files that may be using absolute URLs would have to make similar modifications. And in our particular case, I've already done a little bit of research on where those modifications are needed. And in this particular case, I'm replacing this IO instantiation with a connect statement that specifies a path with location.pathname, which basically makes this more of a relative URL versus an absolute URL. So this is more of the client-side code that had to be modified. a lot of times this is not something that you're going to need in your application, but if your client-side code is trying to access URLs and so forth, and they're using absolute URLs, this type of change is going to be needed. So that takes care of the absolute URLs for this application. There's one more step that I'll walk you through. Again, this is kind of an exception or an optional step, but in this particular case, this is an entire framework for Socket.io that we brought in, and we kind of have to think about the dependencies. So the dependencies that are going to be in the main package.json files, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show hidden files and go down to the package.json file. So I can't really rely on this being the dependencies that are needed for my example application. So most likely these are the dependencies for the entire framework. This is why what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make a backup of this file and let's call it .bak. And then what I'll do is I'll install the dependencies that I know that this application needs, which is the socket.io npm package. So I'm going to go to server, install npm packages, and then put in socket.io. Click add, click OK. So this installs the npm packages, or package in this case, that are needed for this application. And now I'm ready to launch the app. So the app seems to come up just fine, and what we want to verify is that the actual sockets are working, that this is a working application. So I'm going to resize some of these windows and then launch another app. So I basically have two sessions going, and let's resize some of these, bring them both up at the same time, and as I draw on one, that drawing appears on the other. And let's change some colors. So everything seems to be working just as expected. So now you've seen what it takes to take a GitHub project and move it over into a runnable application that you can share with anyone. This is the URL that you would share here. You can share that with anyone and have an application that's actually runnable and working. Thank you.